So this is a video I thought I would never make, but today's the morning after the election, and last night something significantly traumatic happened. No, it's not what you're thinking. Last night was not just about the election for me. It was about the menage a trois I had with my wife, and the event where things all fell apart for the final time. If you guys don't know, my wife admitted she's bi some time ago. Shortly after my wife revealed she's bi, with my approval, she sought out a girlfriend. The girl she found was named Billy. My wife and Billy hit it off, and I was very excited about it. As we'll say, this here is my brain, and within my brain I have no capacity to feel jealousy for two women being together, but naturally I do feel threatened by other men, and of course don't like the idea of my wife with another man. So the three of us are laying in bed one day, and after some kissing and heavy touching, my wife gets cold feet. Eventually she suggests that Billy cares more about me than she does care about her, and she even leaves the house. Alone in the house remain Billy and I did as I told my wife I would do, which is avoid any contact with her that a friend could not justify having with another friend, which as many of you know, translated to me giving her a full body massage, just like my mom had given me prior, and me cuddling with her just like I had done with my friends prior. My mom, however, being a licensed massage therapist. Well, I told my wife about doing those things and she was very upset. My wife and I even broke up temporarily, and in response I told Billy, well, it looks like you're a homewrecker now. Despite the fact we did nothing I wanted to do with my friends, that is technically what she was. Billy gave no emotional response to that, which was a little odd to me, but I let it go. Meanwhile, in attempts to repair things with my wife, I spent $900 on a plane ticket to send Billy home early. Anyway, 6 months passed, and one day my wife seems to have come up with an idea. You see, I didn't text or talk to Billy ever since I flew her home 6 months prior, but my wife decided it was appropriate to contact her again, and now she seems so insistent that Billy had changed. My wife suggested that we bring Billy back, and everyone she talked to, including me, said this is a bad idea, but my wife insisted she come anyway. So one of the first lies that Billy sent our way was regarding her at a concert where multiple people had informed my wife that Billy looked extremely high on drugs. After Billy had gone to that concert, she contacted us, asking if it was okay if she ever made physical contact with another guy. My wife and I concluded that because this was supposed to be a meaningful relationship to us, it should remain just the three of us. Otherwise, a relationship would be casual and therefore be meaningless. So then my wife is informed of a picture that exists where Billy's actually on some guy's shoulders holding his hand. But Billy here insists that she never made physical contact with the guy until she realized that we were aware of the photo. Meanwhile, our friend Ayala tried to defend her friend on the phone, but only made things worse. In fact, she made it even more obvious that what Billy had done was a blatant lie. As a result of that blatant lie, we broke up with Billy. Regardless, the unfortunate reality is at that point, both my wife and I cared very greatly for Billy. So naturally, we wound up forgiving her for her lie. Also, throughout the menage a trois, my wife would consistently and repeatedly express her insecurities, which would lead my wife to dump Billy repeatedly, causing Billy to often go to her friend Ayala, as you can see here, crying. Mind you, I don't recall tears ever falling from her face when we were at the airport whenever I'd send her home after my wife broke up with her. But that is the story of Ayala and Billy, who are basically two peas in a pod. Last time I saw them, I described them as partners in crime, as Ayala clearly indicated she would stand by Billy's side through anything, even if she knew Billy was wrong. By this time, Billy had repeatedly lied to us, and if Ayala is backing her, how could we know anything that either of them said was true? So for a short while, Billy, my wife, and my relationship is on loop. My wife gets a weird feeling about Billy and wants to break things off. I try to convince her that everything's okay, while Billy basically just follows through with whatever we conclude. Now, something that's important to note, a lot of this time, Billy managed some of my social media and was compensated $1,800 a month for it. A benefit of her working as a contractor for me, where she could fly out, work with us, and see us whenever she wanted. She had prior worked at Target, whose schedule was preventing her from actually hanging out with us. Regardless, because of the repeated times Billy lied to us, there came a point where we wanted to look at her text so we could know that she was who she said she was. At first, she refused, but insisted there was nothing on her phone that we wouldn't like. Me being the analytical one, I explained to her how that made no sense. Her excuse generally was that she didn't want to violate the friendship she had with Ayala by showing us their private texts. Meanwhile, her obvious lie did not fool me. I told her she could either tell me what was on those texts and show them to me, or she could consider our relationship permanently over. And you know what she did at that point, as she always does? She gave up on her lie and finally told the truth. She revealed to me in that moment that she had illegally been using pot in Virginia, specifically that she was smoking it with Ayala, and that she had also been starving herself, which she also told me was something that she did with Ayala. But I wasn't going to punish her for finally telling me the truth. Otherwise, that would just encourage more lies. So I made it clear that I didn't want her to do those things anymore, and we moved forward. At this point, we've all kissed, performed oral on each other, and also had sex with each other 20 or 30 times. And what I mean by that is we would all have sex at exactly the same time. It was never a situation where person A watched person B and C make love. What you're seeing here is basically our relationship. We were the Trinity. The point was to function equally in 3 parts. Everyone intended to commit the same amount of passion towards the relationship. But one night when we were all making love, my wife got upset. I had just told Billy for probably the 50th time that I loved her and that she is beautiful. I talked about how they were both attractive around exactly the same moments, but despite that fact, my wife still got upset, and that was my breaking point. I told my wife that there would be no more rules in our relationship. There would be no more boundaries, no more jealousy, and that I would do what I want because I was confident in my wife that I wouldn't leave her. Because at that time, my wife and her girlfriend could literally do whatever they wanted exclusively with each other, and that was completely fine. Same goes with my wife and I. We could do exclusively whatever we wanted, but our relationship was not balanced yet. Billy and I were not able to do anything alone. So the point of me saying all that to my wife was that I intended for the relationship to finally be balanced, for the insecurity to be gone, and for us to at last be a true trinity. From that point on, Billy and I would basically kiss whenever we saw each other. But at some some point, Lainey and her friends sat Billy down and had a talk with her. No one told me what this talk was about. Regardless, the day after the talk, Billy and I wound up sleeping together. And I was happy, as due to that event, we were finally a true three-way relationship. There were no more real boundaries. Regardless, it is important to note that Billy did tell me that she thought Lainey might be upset if she and I slept together. But every time she indicated she was worried, I would remind her of the conversation that I had with Lainey, where I repeatedly told her there would be no more boundaries, we would all have balanced relationships, that there would be no jealousy, etc. Minutes after my wife came home, I took her upstairs alone with the intention to make love to her. But first, I reiterated our previous conversation about there being no boundaries, and I told her that I made love to Billy exclusively. My wife was very upset. You see, apparently in that secret conversation that she had with Billy, she specifically told Billy that she was still not to do anything exclusively with me. Billy told my wife that was no problem, and according to my wife, she even told her that if I did pursue having sex with her, that she would literally tell me to screw off. And both my wife and I were very well aware that Billy had the complete capacity to tell me to screw off. As nights before, she told me she didn't want to stick her crotch in my face, while my wife blew me, as doing so would make her self-conscious. And I said okay, so I wound up just switching between the two, making love to one while making out with the other. So eventually we all sat down and talked to Billy, asking her why she didn't follow through with what she said, or at the very least inform me that the conversation they had clearly conflicted with the path I was on. Billy kept making excuses. She kept saying that she tried to tell me, and yet admitted she never got the words out. My wife then pointed out all she had to do was tell me that she wasn't interested, that she didn't want to do it. She said that if she did that, the only way it could move forward is if it wound up being a rape. Billy responded saying it wasn't rape, but that she did try to tell me that she thought Lainey would be upset. The problem with what Billy was saying is I repeatedly asked her, do you want to? And Billy kept responding with things like, duh, and of course. So the driving theme of what Billy said before we made love was that Lainey might be mad, but that she also wanted to make love to me. Meanwhile, my response, that I told my wife how things were going to be and she agreed, to the fullest extent of my knowledge, eliminated significant concerns that my wife would be upset. All we were left with is number two, which is Billy repeatedly telling me that she wanted to after I asked her if she did. Regardless, after I informed my wife what happened, the menage a trois was officially rocky. Lainey now insisted that Billy cheated on her, because Billy specifically agreed she would not be romantic with me exclusively, and yet she did it anyway. As usual, I jumped at the opportunity to defend Billy, but at some point I could no longer defend her when I asked Billy an absolutely crucial question. Did she say that you and I could not kiss when we were alone? Wife interrupted, insisting that she made it more than clear that Billy was not to kiss me when she was not around. At that point, I was basically speechless, because that conversation took place the night of the day I told my wife that there would be no more jealousy, there would be no more boundaries, that would finally be a completely balanced trinity. Just moments after she had that conversation with them, she and I were kissing with no one else around once again. Now seeing Billy had gone out of her way to initiate kissing with me, both shortly before and after the conversation she had with my wife, specifically prohibiting such actions, Billy just fell to her default position, saying that the reason she initiated kisses with me so many times is because she was scared, which was completely lost on me, because she was going out of her way to kiss me without any provocation. It was at that point I threw down my figurative shield that I had been defending Billy with all this time. I stopped trying to stick up for Billy, as I realized her position was undefendable, and I left the table saying I was going to go take a shower. Meanwhile, Billy left the house and went off to the woods to do what she told me would be hitting trees with this club here. What she actually wound up doing in the woods was make a noose out of a rope and spell F you out of pumpkins we had smashed earlier. She told us about what she did after she came back to the house. Not long after, I went and took a picture of it. This is that picture. I myself don't know how to make a slip knot, but I didn't like there being a slip knot in my backyard, so I've since unraveled the knot and swept my foot over the FU, so that angry message Billy indicated that she had directed at my wife is no longer there. Regardless, around the time all this is going down, Ayala is having issues with her ex-boyfriend, Richie, aka Social Repose. Ayala at this point has gone to every other member of the household and sobbed hysterically about how Richie is threatening to make a video about her, because as he indicated publicly on Twitter and via her texts, he was extremely upset with her collaborating with me. According to them, he even referred to his ex-girlfriend now as his enemy. I guess his logic is, if my ex-girlfriend works with Onision, I'm going to make a hate video about my ex-girlfriend, because who knows why. Regardless, it's clear at this point that Ayla is traumatically affected by her ex. But suddenly she seemed to get a wave of happiness, and Social Repose agreed to not make a hate video about her, as she had apparently agreed to some of his demands. After seeing Social Repose threaten Ayla into silence, I made the following tweet. Retweet if you're against men threatening their ex-girlfriends into remaining silent about being abused. I said, your ex-girlfriend has been repeatedly crying today because of you threatening to publicly humiliate her on your channel. Apparently you said you would attack her because I told everyone about the horrible things you did to her. She did not ask me to say any of those things, nor did she ask me to talk about your twisted/sadistic sex life, which yes, I know about. Fact is, you got dumped for cheating on your girlfriend with multiple women. You can't erase that by threatening your ex. That just makes you look worse. So how about this? You stop harassing your ex, and you get a life. She did not ask me to say all this. I'm just sick of seeing men like you threaten women they abused into silence. Get a life, Richie. What happened next makes no sense to me. Billy texted me Saturday 11:22 p.m. Greg. I said, She said, you just want me to kill myself. I said, no, never. Live forever if possible, okay? She then texted me what I said on Twitter about Richie. I said, yes, I'm not going to let him get away with being horrible. She said everything wasn't okay, but the fact Richie isn't going to harass us made it a little better. Now we're back to square one, where Ayla is crying, and Billy said she just wanted to kill herself. I said, if this harassment leads him to getting what he wants, we're one of many victims to come. She said, know seeing Ayala this upset makes me stressed, and it's just going to get worse, and I can't deal with it. I said, if you want someone to see a man abusing women and do nothing, make sure that someone is not me. She said, I don't want that. It's just a lot of stress right now and it hurts. I said, you know who I am. You know I will not keep my mouth shut if it means bad men get away with hurting people. I'm sad to know you are unhappy with me publicly defending her and all the abuse victims. She said, I'm not sad about that. I'm glad you are defending her. But I don't think you should have brought up the sex thing. I know you're doing what's right, but the sex thing was a little unnecessary for the internet. It just made Ayala look bad for telling you that information. And guess what? The reality is, Ayala didn't just tell me that information. She told my nanny tons of information about social repose. She told my wife's friend. She told my wife. She told me. She told Billy. She told everyone. And what did she tell them about Richie's sex life exactly? Well, a lot of things. And according to her, one of those many weird things that social repose does is that he literally gets erect when women cry. Ayala told me he prefers to have sex with women while they're crying. But like I said, that's just one of the many things he's into. I was also told by someone who spoke to her in this house. She said social repose is smelly and indicated it was gross having sex with him. Regardless, I responded to Billy saying that was said to increase the chance of him not responding to that message with an attack video or otherwise. He needs to know that it only gets worse for him if he pushes this further. Like I said, I was told a decent amount about his sex life. Him having sex with people while they cry, that's only the tip of the iceberg. Regardless, Billy said he has trash on me and Ayla, so it's going to bring me further into this crippling depression and I probably will kill myself. I do not do well under stressful situations. It's literally been on my mind all day and I'm just so close to walking out that door and doing it, and I do not want to feel this way. I asked about the trash that social repose has on them. She said she doesn't know, and I said that's a lie. I said you need to stop lying to me. She then admitted that he knew that she used to smoke weed. She said she didn't want the internet to know about that. She goes on to say, I can only imagine what he has on her. So I responded, moral of the story, don't do illegal and or horrible things, and I quoted what she was really saying to me, which is, Greg, he might tell people I used to break the law with drug abuse. She said, I understand you don't trust me, but you can't just ignore my pain and just point out I said he had dirt on us. I have no idea what he could possibly say, because him and I had been friends for almost a year. Can't think of anything other than that. She said, do you hate me now because you're making me feel that way? I said, what do you want from me? Let a guy get away with abusing women to protect you from people knowing you committed crimes and Ayala did who knows what. Stop hiding from your own corruption. She says, you're right. I said, how can anyone trust you ever? She said, you're also right about that too. I'm sorry. Later on that night, I asked her if she was up and I told her I wanted to talk in the garage. In the garage, it became clear that Billy was trying to sneak out in the middle of the night with Ayala. They had already called an Uber and they were going to go stay with a friend. But I successfully convinced Billy to stay, telling her that she could potentially win the trust of Lainey and myself if she got a tattoo that said Lillie. It's the Lainey and Billy ship name and would have a picture of a lily just above it. I showed her my wrist tattoos. I told her in her shoes I would do it, as in the past I had already done something similar. Billy already has tattoos all over her body, so she didn't indicate it was a big deal to get a pretty lily tattoo for the sake of proving her love to Lainey. Ayla was there for half the conversation and she indicated this was all fine, but the moment I left the garage, she in only a few words convinced Billy to follow through with abandoning us. Billy then came in and hugged me for a long duration. She was profusely crying. I told her I didn't want her to go, but that if she left, there would likely be no going back. She said, don't say that. I said, it's true. She said, I know. She asked me to walk her to the Uber, so I did. I continued to reiterate that if she left, she was abandoning us for good. And I kept telling her I fought so hard for her. I constantly defended her and reminded her that after all I did, that she was walking out on us when I was still fighting for her. But she left us anyway. After she lied to us, after she betrayed us, after I was giving her a final chance at repairing things and redeeming herself. Regardless, she later on sent Lainey flowers. I told her they were no consolation for what she had done. I said if she truly loved her, she would do all of the following so she could be with Lainey again. I reminded her of the lily tattoo. I told her that she should never use drugs again, that she should never lie to us again, and never associate with the person who was the sole reason that she left us that night. The person who stayed in the garage and convinced her to leave after she had already agreed to stay. I said, we all love you, Billy, even after all this. She said, I love you guys too. I said, please, just prove we can trust you again. That's all we need. And then all she had to say after that is, I hope you're excited for our new president. I responded with, call me. As you can see underneath it says delivered. The rest of the messages clearly indicate they're not delivered. So I left her this message. You said you loved us. When someone tells you they love you, remember this moment. Remember we forgave you so many times. And I personally fought till the very end for you. I can't explain or justify you doing all this, but I wish you well. And that, I believe, is the very end of our association with Billy.